Alright, it's Henry again, and this is the third work in progress video for my 1 to 100 scale Leo and Leo space type project. And all week long I have been working like a dog getting all of these weapons and accessories done, and I'm not 100% finished with them, but I'm about 90% there. I should be able to have all the weapons and accessories finished by tomorrow. So there is actually quite a lot to cover, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I wanted to include as many accessories as possible. For my my Tall Geese Project Leo that I made back in 2011, I pretty much did the shield, the Dabra Gun, the machine gun, and a couple beam sabers, and that was pretty much it. For these two Leos, I wanted to include all the accessories I could think of. I think the only accessory I really left out was the parachute pack, which is kind of dumb anyway because I can't even really use it. Anyway, starting out, basic Leo machine gun. I used pretty much the same techniques that I used for the first one I made 2 years ago, only I made it a little bit more anime accurate. The bar is different. I just made that out of wire with a piece of brass tubing on it. And just overall, it's a little bit smaller than the first one I made 2 years ago, so I really like the way it turned out. Next up would be the beam rifle and the shorty beam rifle. I made these. This tan colored part is a recast from Virgo 2's beam rifle, and then I just added all this other stuff, the pla plate. And I made two of them, obviously one having a much shorter barrel, that being the shorty beam rifle. It also doesn't have a handle on the top. And yeah, these will go with the Leo space type. Alright, next up is the Dabra Gun. I originally thought about just using the standard Tall Geese Dabra Gun, but instead I went ahead and made some modifications. I blow the dust off of it, it's covered in plastic dust. Anyway, the first thing I had to do was modify this little connector. I basically just took the connector and cut it in half, and then added this L-shaped piece of pla plate to bring the connector under the Dabra Gun, whereas previously it went over. And that can rotate and go back and forth a little bit. It's got a little bit of movement to it, but that'll connect to the shoulder mount. The handle oops, I can't even keep a grip on anything. The handle I moved off center a little bit to the side, kind of like on the Robot Damashi version. And I also put the handle on a peg so the handle can go back and forth. And this little handle I didn't have to replace, but I did just for the sake of being different. I think this little handle was left over from Master Grade Full Armor Unicorn Gundam, so I just cemented that on there and it can do like so. And also the barrel, you can see I shortened it by about 1 centimeter. It was originally out to about here, and I shortened it a bit and then replaced the plastic barrel with a copper tube. So the shoulder mount for the Dabra Gun I've started on, but as you can see I've cut out all the pieces here, but I just haven't cemented them together yet. But you'll see that when it's all finished. Alright, next up, I guess the shield. The shield is another thing where I was originally going to use the standard Tall Geese shield, but I decided to go with more of a Robot Damashi design. I made this little box here out of pla plate, and I'm going to drill a couple holes and cement the handle there at the bottom. And then I'll make a couple little pieces on the side where I can connect the beam sabers. And again, beam sabers are another thing. I was originally going to use the Tall Geese beam sabers, but I dug around in my box of scrap gunpla parts and found some cylindrical beam sabers and put these little brass rings around the ends for detail. If my camera will focus in on them. It's not wanting to. Anyway, there you go. So now he's got round beam saber just like the Robot Damashi had. And I'm just going to use the beam saber blades that came with the 1 to 100 scale Tall Geese. Alright, where to next? The Bazooka here is, well, what I've got of the Bazooka so far. There's a few more parts right here that I have yet to cement onto the Bazooka. But it's looking pretty good, I think. We obviously used a brass tube for the main body of the bazooka. Actually, put a main brass tube along the length and then some smaller ones on the outside, or larger ones I should say, to give kind of a panel line there going around it. And then I filled the entire tube with resin and then drilled it out, because the opening would have been a little bit too big, and I think it looks a little bit better that way. Got a nice little vent textured piece of ply plate on the back end there. And yeah, that's still got a little bit of work to do on it, but you'll see that when the review comes around. Alright, shoulder mounted cannons, I'll do those next. Now these, again, are not quite done, but they are getting there. They're pretty much made completely out of ply plate, except I'll be doing the cannon barrels out of metal tubes. I've just got to do a little bit of trimming, a little bit of sanding, put a peg on here, drill a hole there, put that on top so it'll be able to rotate. It's not going to rotate a lot, but it'll have a little bit of rotation to it, and then I'll have the cannon sticking out of there. And I plan to put a peg down in here, and it'll just peg into the shoulder joint, as well as the Dabra Gun mount and the shield mount and the shoulder armor. I originally mentioned in my last video that I was going to have the shoulder armor just glued on, and what I was thinking about doing is just making several shoulder joints and just replacing the whole shoulder joint. But I thought to myself, why bother doing that when I can just drill a hole in the shoulder joint and put a peg onto the shoulder armor, Dabra Gun mount, shield mount, etc., and I can just have everything peg in. So that's the system I'm going to be using. Anyway, what next? I think all that's left is the two backpacks. Now, right off the bat, I kind of had to figure out a way that I was going to connect the backpacks to the Leos. And what I've done is I've taken this little circle that's on the Tall Geese's, or the Leo's I should say, his back, and basically just cut around the circumference of that circle, and went inside and glued this polycap in. It's glued at the bottom right now, but once I get everything put together, I'll actually cement that into the top as well. As you can see, it kind of connects to that piece of ply plate in there. And I've got a little polycap in there, and this little circle is got a peg on it, so it'll be able to just plug in there. And I left the peg relatively short. It just barely goes into that polycap. That way I'll be able to get it out pretty easily without having to fiddle around with it and accidentally break the peg, and that just wouldn't be good. So anyway, that's how the backpacks are going to connect. Here is the space backpack for Leo Space Type, or what I've got of it so far. Most of the structure is here. I've basically just got to add detail and scribe panel lines and stuff like that, but the main structure is there. And it's going to have a peg on here that'll fit into there, and you can see like so. Originally I wanted to do these propellant tanks out of plastic, but I couldn't find any that were quite big enough, so I basically just took brass tubing and did a central tube, and then cut some smaller rings and put around the outside to make those panel lines, because obviously I can't scribe panel lines into metal. And then use some epoxy putty to make the end caps. These little plastic thrusters, those are sticking out a little bit too far. I'll have to sand those down later. But that's the space backpack. And one other thing I really wanted to do, which I think so far is the best looking accessory, is the flight pack. And this is honestly the accessory I cared the least about at first, because I knew I was hardly ever going to use it, but so far I think it's the best looking accessory I've done. I really want to zoom in on these vents on the back here. Come on, Mr. Camera, let's go. It's not wanting to cooperate. There we go. I got some ply plate that has like ridges molded into it, and that's really going to help with making vents and stuff. I just think that looks really, really good. These wings I got, these were left over from my Master Grade XS Gundam when I did the conversion kit. So these are the plastic wings. I just added this little outside edge bit, and then the rest of it's all just ply plate. Again, it'll have a peg that'll go in there, and it'll just connect like so. And then I've got these little thingies that'll be mounted to the bottom on each side. I've got 2 of those. So, let's see, have I forgotten anything? I don't think I have. I think I've covered everything. So, that's what I've been up to all week. The construction on these 2 kits is just about finished. In fact, I think I can finish up all these weapons and accessories tomorrow. I'm also going to start painting tomorrow. I want to go ahead and paint a few parts tomorrow and then spend the rest of the day finishing up construction and clean up on this stuff. So I think within about a week or so, maybe this time next week, you guys can expect to see both of these Leos completed. So that about does it for this work in progress video. I'll probably do one more just to show me painting the kits, and then after that it'll be the review. So with that, I'll see you guys next time.